He was making his rounds in the hallway when the CEO happened to overhear him speaking Mandarin, Spanish, and French as fluently as a native. What happened next left the entire company reeling. Most people at Halberg International barely registered the security team, not out of malice, but simply out of habit. Each night, they slipped in quietly, checking doors, monitoring cameras, reminding staff to badge in, blending into the backdrop of the building like a faint hum in a modern symphony. Marcus Atwater, a black man in his early 40s with a solid frame, a composed expression, and the steely resolve of someone who's seen it all. His deep navy uniform was crisply pressed, his black shoes polished to a shine, and a crackling security radio clipped to his belt. Marcus's shift started at dusk and stretched into the early hours, long after most office workers had gone home. He'd move methodically down each corridor, inspect every door and lock, probe every shadowed corner few ever ventured into. Occasionally, he'd pause at the reception desk to jot something in the night log or gently remind a rookie intern, "You forgot to badge in. Don't let it slip next time." No one truly noticed Marcus. Busy employees passed him by as though he were part of the decor, like the wall clock or the fire extinguisher in the stairwell. On some days, he'd go from dawn to dusk without so much as a glance, let alone a greeting. At the company's big events, he stood unobtrusively at the fringe, observing the laughter and chatter, then drifted back into the shadows. Even his name, Marcus Atwater, meant nothing to most at Halberg International. In the internal email directory, he was listed only as Night Security. A few even confused him with his counterpart on the morning shift. To everyone else, he was just the gatekeeper, the guy who raised the barrier, reminded them to swipe their badges, and kept an eye on the CCTV feeds. Only those who lingered late, the cleaning crew, the veteran maintenance man, knew Marcus well. To them, he was the one who'd flash a light when the power unexpectedly cut out, the only person who remembered every facilities worker's name, even though no one ever addressed him by name in public. Marcus never complained. He'd grown accustomed to melting into the polished floors, to stashing his own hopes beneath his security jacket. To him, this job was a silent shield, a way to keep a small roof over his head and provide for his only son. He never expected anyone to notice him, let alone that one day the name Marcus Atwater would send shockwaves through this steel and glass tower. But on that fateful morning, fate began to turn. Right in the place he'd always believed he'd remain invisible forever. As soon as Marcus thought another workday would pass like all the rest, quietly, and without leaving a mark, that very morning shattered every mundane pattern at Halberg International. The lobby at peak hour was like a roaring river, employees jostling shoulder to shoulder, phones buzzing nonstop, department heads exchanging hurried updates before slipping into the elevators. Hastily printed reports, the clip-clop of polished shoes on marble, the ping of laptops, all blended into the characteristic cacophony of a Monday morning, busy yet impersonal. Amid this tide, Marcus stood in his usual spot by the reception desk, scanning every corner like an invisible gatekeeper keeping order. Then, cutting through the familiar din, came an unexpected sound. Not English, nor the Spanish you'd hear around the office, but warm, precise Mandarin, ringing out clearly from the front of the desk. CEO Jonathan Kellerman, striding across the lobby en route to his private executive elevator, froze. A flicker of surprise crossed his salt and pepper features. Known for being perpetually busy and aloof, Kellerman had passed Marcus hundreds of times over the years without ever registering who he was. Jonathan pivoted and narrowed his eyes, expecting to see an international liaison, or at least an exchange program intern guiding an elderly Chinese visitor. Instead, there was Marcus, his dark navy uniform immaculate, a security schematic folder slung over one shoulder, calmly conversing in flawless Mandarin. He offered clear directions, bowed politely, and the once flustered guest visibly straightened, a grateful smile replacing his hesitation. It all happened in minutes, yet it sent a subtle wave rippling through the lobby. The receptionist, a few sales assistants, and some mid-level managers who happened to glance over were all taken aback. Many exchanged looks of stunned confusion. In a corner, Operations Chief Gregory Harris, infamous for his strict conservative stance, watched with a suspicious, frosty stare. In Gregory's world, the security team were mere auxiliary cogs, not meant to stand out or upset the rigid order. Once Marcus finished, the visitor thanked him in hesitant English. Marcus simply nodded and slipped back to his post at the desk, his expression unchanged, as if he hadn't realized he'd just upended the lobby's calm. Yet, from that moment on, curious and even hostile, glances converged on him. Whispers broke out. "Just a guard. What's he trying to pull? Why show off like that?" Probably angling to get noticed by the boss. Beneath the gossip lay bruised egos of people like Gregory Harris, staff accustomed to clear hierarchies. They resented seeing a small cog like Marcus suddenly shine, even overshadow those deemed the company's backbone. And from that point, a chain reaction began. Not just curiosity and admiration, but envy and silent wariness. Marcus, once invisible in the skyscraper's heart, had stepped into the light and unwittingly challenged the hidden limits of its power structure. The lobby hadn't even had time to cool down from Marcus's Mandarin showcase when another unexpected situation arrived, as if fate itself were testing the old order's boundaries. A young Latino delivery man appeared, his face tense, clutching a stack of invoices and papers. He fumbled awkwardly with the reception staff, repeatedly pointing to a densely Spanish-printed contract that no one understood. No one at the reception desk, not even the logistics assistant, could help him. The tension rose as the shipment risked being returned, and the delivery delayed simply because nobody spoke his language. All eyes turned again to Marcus, Mandarin still echoing in their minds. Not wanting things to drag on, Marcus stepped forward and gently asked, "En qué puedo ayudarle?" The delivery man visibly relaxed and began explaining in rapid Spanish. Marcus listened, nodded, and then briefly relayed to the receptionist. He needs to sign off and confirm the delivery location for IT. There's a minor error on the invoice that needs verification. Before anyone could recover, on the opposite side of the lobby, a sharply dressed European gentleman, the network equipment vendor manager, was furiously arguing with the tech team in French, upset that his package had been mislabeled. Nobody at Halberg spoke enough French to diffuse his anger. The tension was palpable. Without missing a beat, Marcus pivoted and switched to flawless French. "Monsieur, je peux vous aider. Le problème vient d'une erreur d'étiquetage. Nous allons vérifier immédiatement." The man froze, then nodded after a moment, his anger melting into relief. Marcus smiled politely, guided him to the tech department, and resolved the issue swiftly like a seasoned expert. By now, even department heads and senior managers, who'd never given security a second glance, were staring at Marcus in disbelief. A guard fluent in 3 languages? Had they been mistaken about him, or had he worked somewhere prestigious before? A flurry of puzzled questions buzzed around the lobby. In a corner, Gregory Harris watched with a wounded pride. Gregory prided himself on maintaining strict order, held an international business degree, and believed that only people like him could embody true professionalism. Watching Marcus handle both situations so deftly left him simmering with anger and resentment. his furrowed brow and clenched fists betraying his discomfort. CEO Jonathan Kellerman, standing not far away, observed every moment without blinking. A pang of embarrassment and something like shame washed over him. For years, he'd passed Marcus dozens of times, seeing only the night guard, a nameless shadow. Now that same man was proving that real talent, poise, and courage don't require an expensive suit. The lobby fell silent. Scattered conversations died away. Those who'd been indifferent began whispering to one another. Some even hurriedly checked their phones, hoping to find an overlooked detail about Marcus in HR records. None of them had ever imagined that the invisible guard was actually an unrecognized gem. And in that instant, an undercurrent of admiration, envy, and unease began to ripple through Halberg International. Opponents like Gregory Harris struggled to contain their frustration, feeling the foundations of their orderly world shaken, while CEO Kellerman, for the first time, resolved he could no longer pass Marcus by as though he were a shadow. The atmosphere in the Halberg International lobby fell as though every movement had focused on a single point: Marcus Atwater. And in that moment, CEO Jonathan Kellerman could no longer look away. Even though he was already late for his executive meeting, he shifted course and strode straight to the reception desk, where Marcus had just finished speaking perfect French, as if it were no big deal. Those standing nearby were stunned. The interns at the front desk held their breath, and Gregory Harris, positioned farther back, turned his head with his lips pressed tight. Gregory felt a silent challenge. How could just a guard suddenly command the attention he'd thought reserved for senior management? Kellerman stopped, his gaze on Marcus no longer the distracted glance of countless past encounters. For the first time, he saw this guard as a real person, not just another shadow in the building. "Marcus, that was Mandarin just now, wasn't it?" the CEO asked, surprise clear in his voice. Marcus nodded calmly. "Yes, sir. I also speak Spanish, French, and several other languages if needed." "How many languages do you speak?" Kellerman asked, struggling to believe what he'd just witnessed. "9, and I can read Latin, though I don't use it much," Marcus replied, neither boastful nor hesitant, just stating a fact as ordinary as, "Yesterday was rainy. Today's sunny." That humility struck Kellerman hard, stirring embarrassment and something like shame. All these years leading Halberg, he had signed countless expensive contracts to hire international experts, poured money into multicultural programs, and hosted global talent conferences. Yet here, at the very heart of his own skyscraper, stood a linguistic virtuoso in the humblest position. Kellerman glanced at the walls lined with achievement plaques. The HR evaluations focused on academic credentials and glowing bios, while the true gem had been overlooked right under his nose. Across the lobby, Gregory Harris narrowed his eyes, resentment and suspicion coiling within him. In his mind, this was a crack in the power structure he'd spent years building. A guard, speaking 4 or 5 languages, even catching the CEO's eye. It threatened his monopoly on influence and prestige. Quiet questions rippled through the crowd. Where did he learn all those languages? Why is he only a guard? Did he work at an embassy before, or is there some hidden story? But Marcus remained composed, answering each curious question in a warm, steady tone, and meeting every gaze directly. He wasn't showing off, seeking recognition, or trying to outshine anyone. It was that very poise that gnawed at Kellerman's conscience. He looked around the lobby, every eye fixed on Marcus, and silently asked himself, how many other talents are slipping through my company unnoticed? That question haunted Kellerman for the rest of the day and became the spark for decisions that would forever change the destinies of both Marcus and Halberg International. The gnawing sense of regret and unease haunted CEO Jonathan Kellerman all that morning. After witnessing Marcus's talent firsthand, he couldn't focus on a single meeting. His mind kept returning to that diligent, taciturn guard who nevertheless wielded language skills even Halberg's top experts respected. Mid-morning, when his curiosity and remorse reached a breaking point, Kellerman did something unprecedented in the company's history. He personally called security and requested that Marcus Atwater come up to his office on the 18th floor. That single act sent ripples through every support department. A guard summoned by the big boss, quickly becoming the hot topic among maintenance crews, receptionists, and even mid-level teams normally obsessed only with reports and metrics. In the security break room, Gregory Harris's face darkened the moment he heard the news. He tilted his head toward Marcus with open disdain. Gregory had never tolerated anything out of the ordinary, and the thought of being upstaged in front of senior leadership rankled him deeply. Forcing a bitter grin, he muttered to his colleagues, "Looks like our Marcus is about to get a reward for that morning's show. Won't be long till he's back where he belongs." But for Marcus, the invitation made his heart skip. In 13 years on the night shift, he'd never set foot on the 18th floor, a no-go zone reserved for sleekly suited executives speaking the jargon he'd only ever heard crackling over his security radio. When the receptionist delivered the summons, Marcus felt a genuine flutter of nerves. He scanned the room and caught Gregory's mocking, scrutinizing gaze, as though everyone was silently warning, "Dream on. This isn't your place." Yet his quiet pride, the very thing that had sustained him through countless lonely nights, rose up within him. He straightened his uniform, took a steadying breath, nodded at a coworker, and stepped into the elevator. The 18th floor corridor was hushed, perfumed with expensive cologne mingling with oak and leather. Everything here was refined, from the plush wool carpeting and rare potted palms to the warm light dancing off the glass walls. Even the echo of Marcus's shoes on the carpet made him wonder if he truly belonged. Kellerman's executive assistant, a poised blonde in impeccable attire, eyed Marcus head to toe, surprise and skepticism flickering across her face. Yet she offered a gracious smile and led him to wait outside the CEO's door, which was usually kept firmly closed against any unscheduled knock. As he waited, Marcus felt the discreet stares of passing executives, some casting a quick glance before turning away, others holding their gaze with inscrutable expressions. To them, he was the guard who got a rare invite, a blip on their radar of unspoken rules about rank, influence, and appearance. Finally, the heavy wooden door opened. Kellerman emerged, his expression serious but his eyes alight with genuine interest. He stepped aside and personally beckoned Marcus into his office, dispensing with the usual formalities afforded to lower-level staff. Marcus crossed that threshold, shaking yet determined, unaware that this moment would become the turning point of his life. And from that instant, the real challenge to Halberg International's power structure began, setting in motion a chain of events no one could have predicted. The director's office door closed behind them, isolating Marcus in an opulently stifling space. Soft light reflecting off the walnut desk, a world map behind the CEO dotted with pins marking international markets. Beyond the glass wall, the city skyline glittered in the morning sun. But inside, all attention was focused on the two men at opposite ends of the table. Kellerman sat down, looking at Marcus as if seeing him for the first time, not through the lens of rank or uniform, but with eyes seeking the truth behind his usual calm. He didn't beat around the bush. "I need you to be honest, Marcus. How did someone like you learn so many languages, and why am I only finding this out now?" Marcus hesitated for a moment. There was a guarded look in his eyes, not fear, but the vigilance of someone long judged, doubted, and disappointed by society. Yet this time he didn't shy away. Perhaps it was the CEO's sincere gaze or the solemnity of the room. But Marcus decided to open up. His voice was measured, each word firm and unembellished. "I was born in Toledo, Ohio. My father was a plumber. My mother worked nights in a nursing home. We weren't well off, but they always believed education was the only path to a better life. I earned a full scholarship in linguistics at Kent State. That was my parents' greatest pride." He paused, hands clasped in his lap, then continued in a deeper tone. "But in my sophomore year, my mother fell gravely ill. I had to take a leave of absence to care for her. 6 months later, my father suffered a fatal stroke. My world fell apart. I lost my scholarship, ran out of money, no one could help." Marcus's expression hardened as he pressed on, unflinching. "After that, I got married, thinking I could rebuild. But my wife left when our son was just over 1. I did whatever it took, warehouse work, busboy, loading trucks, even side shifts at a corner store, just to provide for him. The night security job at Halberg was my last resort, because it let me spend daytime hours taking my son to school, helping him with homework." The room fell silent, as if every outside sound was hushed by Marcus's story. Kellerman listened in silence, nodding with genuine empathy. Marcus looked up, his voice soft but resolute. "No matter how busy I was, I never stopped studying languages. It was the only way I could hold on to my self-worth, to prove I wasn't worthless no matter how hard life knocked me down. I borrowed old textbooks from the library, listened to podcasts, read foreign newspapers on my beat-up phone. No one noticed, no one asked, because to them, I was just a guard." A flicker of emotion crossed the CEO's face, but Kellerman remained silent. Inside him, remorse grew as he realized the years Marcus had quietly fought not only for basic necessities but also against society's narrow judgments. Meanwhile, down the 18th floor hallway, Gregory Harris passed by the closed door, stopping with a mix of curiosity and displeasure. Gregory believed in standards, that a guard should just do his duty, not stand out. Knowing Marcus was in there, talking life with the CEO unsettled him deeply. Inside the luxurious office, Marcus concluded, "I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I don't expect anything. But you asked, so I'm answering honestly. My life hasn't been lucky, but I refuse to let it destroy my will or my dignity." Those final words rang quietly yet powerfully, shrinking the space between Marcus and the CEO, no longer boss and subordinate, but two human beings, two lives once sidelined by lack of recognition and hope. In that moment, Kellerman truly understood. Beneath the dark navy uniform and quiet demeanor stood an indomitable spirit, a rare talent, and a story Halberg International had never before acknowledged. Marcus's story was still echoing in Kellerman's mind when he returned to his desk that afternoon. But before he could sort through his emotions, an unforeseen crisis erupted. A fateful test for both Marcus and himself. Reception burst into his office. The Brazilian delegation, key partners in Halberg's South American expansion deal, had arrived almost an hour early. At the same time, the only interpreter versed in both Portuguese and technical terminology had just called in an emergency family leave. The contract team, the engineering department, even international management were in a frenzy. No one felt confident enough to bridge the two sides in this critical negotiation. Tension in the 18th floor hallway spiked when Gregory Harris, waiting just outside the boardroom, spoke up at once. Without a professional interpreter, we postpone. You can't risk a multi-million-dollar meeting falling into the hands of someone unqualified." Other international experts nodded in agreement, their reluctance plain to see. They all eyed the CEO anxiously, convinced no makeshift solution could salvage this meeting. Kellerman hesitated for only a moment. Then the memory of that morning's conversation, Marcus's steady voice and calm smile as he spoke of overcoming hardship, flashed through his mind. Without another word, he picked up the phone, called security, and ordered Marcus Atwater to report to the 18th floor immediately. The corridor seemed to pause. Gregory stared at Kellerman, a sardonic curl at the corner of his mouth. "You're really asking a guard to interpret for our strategic partners? Is this some kind of prank hour?" A few managers shook their heads, whispering, "If this blows up, the CEO's credibility is toast." Reckless. Who'd gamble a deal like this on someone with no certification? When the elevator arrived, Marcus stepped out in his dark navy uniform, composed yet visibly uneasy. Every eye followed him, curious, doubtful, even disdainful, yet secretly hopeful. Gregory sidled up, low voice dripping contempt. "You really think you can stand in front of Brazilian executives? This isn't your stage, Marcus. Big business isn't a show for amateurs." Marcus met his gaze without flinching, gave a brief nod to Kellerman, and walked into the boardroom, where the Brazilian partners sat, tense and puzzled. Outside, Gregory folded his arms and turned to the international team. "Just wait. Soon you'll see why rules aren't meant to be broken." Whispers, scrutinizing looks, Gregory's smug certainty, all seemed arrayed against Marcus from the moment he entered. But behind that closed door, Kellerman had placed his trust in the once invisible guard, risking the company's future and his own reputation on Marcus's shoulders. And in that instant, the true test of human value, whether in credentials, titles, or sheer grit, was set to challenge the entire power structure, prejudices, and fear of change that had kept Marcus hidden for so long. Stepping through the boardroom door, Marcus felt every doubtful gaze settling on his shoulders. Though his dark navy uniform made him stand out against the long table draped in white, he kept a calm smile and steady stride, accustomed, it seemed, to walking the line of suspicion. The Brazilian partners, sun-tanned businessmen in crisp white shirts and sleek black hair, sat opposite the Halberg International leadership, their faces tight with tension and confusion. The head of international affairs flipped through pages anxiously, while Gregory Harris stood at the far end of the table, arms crossed and eyes as cold as steel, poised to pounce on any sign of failure. CEO Kellerman broke the silence with a nod toward Marcus. Without hesitation, Marcus approached and greeted them in Portuguese. "Bom dia, senhores. É uma honra recebê-los aqui. Espero que a viagem tenha sido tranquila." "Good morning, gentlemen. It's an honor to welcome you here. I hope your trip to Texas was smooth." The room fell silent for a heartbeat. Then Brazilian director Paulo beamed and replied warmly in his native tongue. The formalities flowed seamlessly into contract discussions, technical terms, and nuanced concerns, issues only someone fluent in both languages and cultures could resolve. Marcus didn't merely translate words. He conveyed cultural subtleties and diffused tense moments with gentle humor. When one director joked that Texas cuisine was harder to swallow than feijoada in Rio, Marcus responded with a perfectly local retort that sent everyone laughing. The atmosphere immediately warmed. Barriers melted away faster than in any stilted Halberg diplomatic effort. Halberg's executives, used to formulaic international meetings, watched in astonishment as Marcus danced effortlessly between languages and customs, tackling each snag with poise and insight. Initial skepticism gave way to genuine respect. Even Gregory Harris, ever the cynic, couldn't deny it. For the first time, the Brazilian partners reached across the table to shake Marcus's hand after initial term approvals, their eyes shining with genuine satisfaction. When the meeting concluded, Director Paulo Rose strode to CEO Kellerman, shook his hand firmly, and pointed to Marcus. Senhor Kellerman, este homem é o melhor elo de ligação que já conhecemos. Ele entende com nossos negócios. Mr. Kellerman, this man is the best link we've ever had. He truly understands us. Beyond praise, the Brazilian leaders asked to take photos with Marcus, exchanged business cards, and extended invitations for him to visit Rio as their honored guest. In that moment, everyone in the room, from Halberg's executive team to the international specialists, recognized the value Marcus had brought. Not through titles, but through skill, cultural sensitivity, and genuine human connection. Only Gregory Harris maintained a frosty exterior, though surprise and discomfort flickered beneath. He realized that the invisible boundary between guard and leader had just been shattered in front of dozens of witnesses, by real talent, not luck, and CEO Kellerman, gratefully accepting enthusiastic handshakes from the partners, felt a surge of pride mixed with shame, wondering how many other hidden gems he'd overlooked simply because they were in roles others took for granted. That afternoon, when Marcus left the boardroom with a quiet smile, he remained night security on paper. But in the eyes of everyone who'd witnessed his performance, and in his own heart, old barriers had begun to crack, opening a new horizon not just for Marcus's destiny, but for all those long deemed invisible within this system. The spectacular success in the boardroom that day sent shockwaves through Halberg International, spreading like a fresh breeze before the undercurrents could even calm. Every office floor was buzzing about the never-before-seen meeting, where a mere security guard had turned the negotiations upside down, getting Brazil's toughest directors to laugh and initial the contract in a single morning. But for CEO Jonathan Kellerman, the echo of that meeting ran even deeper. That night he lay awake, unable to sleep, replaying the image of Marcus standing calmly amidst a storm of doubt. Each flawless translation, each tactful cultural bridge he built. Kellerman thought about all the years he'd spent cultivating a multinational culture, splurging on foreign expert contracts and language programs for his execs. Yet no one had ever forged such genuine connections as Marcus had, armed only with heart and raw talent. The next morning, before the offices had fully staffed up, Kellerman summoned Marcus to the executive floor. Word of this spread instantly to Gregory Harris and the mid-level managers. Anxious whispers and suspicion rippled through the corridors. Gregory scowled and confided to his inner circle, "Bet he's just giving him an honorary certificate, then we'll all go back to business as usual. Don't expect a guard's morning of interpreting to change his fate." Marcus stepped into the elevator in the same Navy uniform he'd worn for over a decade, his heart pounding with a mix of shock and anticipation. He'd never been beyond the night shift corridors of Halberg's 18th floor, where executives ruled. Now, under the scrutinizing stares, equal parts envy and astonishment, he felt less invisible than ever. He remembered the genuine handshake from the Brazilian partners, the laughter in the boardroom, and the trusting look in the CEO's eyes. When he arrived, Kellerman greeted him with a remarkably warm smile. He invited Marcus to sit in the chair across from him. Instead of perching behind his desk, the CEO sat level with him, as if they were teammates rather than superior and subordinate. After a brief bit of small talk, Kellerman got straight to the point. Marcus, I refuse to let another day go by wasted. After what I witnessed, Halberg International needs a new role. Head of Cultural and International Relations. I want you to fill that position." Marcus froze, instinctively blurting out, "But sir, I don't have any management credentials. I've never supervised anyone beyond my shift, and I don't even own a suit." Kellerman just smiled, confidence shining in his eyes. "I need results, not certificates. You've proven you're not only a master of languages, but you truly understand people. That's worth more than any diploma I've seen on an interview wall." The room crackled with emotion, half in disbelief, half in elation. Marcus had never dared dream that one day he'd be offered leadership of an entirely new department, one built on merit and real value, not framed degrees on a wall. Downstairs, Gregory Harris erupted in outrage as he heard the news, sweeping a pile of files off a table and muttering, "Since when does a guard get to stand shoulder to shoulder with those who actually earned degrees?" Meanwhile, whispers spread across every department. Is the CEO just playing to the media? See if this guard lasts a month in an exec role. But for Marcus, that very moment marked a historic turning point. Not only for him, but for everyone in Halberg who'd ever been underestimated. His hand still trembled as he shook the CEO's hand, unable quite to believe what was happening. Yet in his eyes, for the first time in years, there burned genuine hope and pride. And somewhere deep within Halberg International, the old boundaries of power and pedigree began to crack, making way for a transformation no one, not even Gregory Harris, could hold back. The news that Marcus Atwater, a night shift security guard, had officially been named Head of Cultural and International Relations rippled through every floor of Halberg International, outpacing even the buzz about the Brazil deal. Whispers darted from the breakfast lounge to the engineering bays, bleeding into every group chat with curious, astonished, and sometimes outright indignant glances. On the administrative level, the English, fluent assistants murmured as they refreshed their inboxes. "No way. She actually said it? Marcus, the night guard, is our boss now? I've got a master's degree from a New York university, and I've been waiting 3 years without even a look." In the International Affairs office, a junior manager laughed scornfully. "Guess the company's just doing a diversity PR stunt. Maybe we should all go learn to be security guards next." What began as hushed gossip quickly turned into open coldness whenever Marcus showed up in any department. In meetings or passing through the halls, he caught colleagues avoiding his eyes, offering him stiff handshakes, or, even worse, shooting him disdainful side glances, as if to say, "Who does he think he is?" On the 12th floor, where his new office stood behind sleek glass walls, Marcus saw nothing but a solitary, unfamiliar figure reflected back at him. His first day there, his desk held only a computer, a small potted plant, and a nameplate not yet engraved with his proper title. Occasionally, he'd find anonymous notes slid under his door. "Change your uniform, change your destiny." A guard teaching execs about multiculturalism. Now that's laughable. His work email didn't escape the barbs either. If all you need is a uniform and a foreign language, anyone can be a boss. Good luck with the show for attention seekers. Even in internal strategy meetings, some department heads went out of their way to avoid speaking to Marcus, routing questions through others, or coldly grilling him about his qualifications and fit within the company's management culture. Gregory Harris, once content to see Marcus as a mere cog, now made his opposition obvious, frequently dismissing Marcus's ideas or sneering whenever cultural transformation came up. International deals need certified experts, not goodwill experiments with language-savvy guards. Gregory shot back, locking eyes with Marcus during a planning session. The company felt split in two. A quiet minority believed in Marcus's vision and his real value, but stayed silent. The majority, however, either shrugged or openly rebelled, seeing Marcus's rise as a slap in the face to their traditional paths of study and promotion. Late into many nights in his new office, Marcus sat by the window watching taillights stream down the boulevard. His isolation seemed tangible, not just in the stares, but in the sense that he was still an outsider in a world he'd once known only as the invisible guard. Yet, amid the storm of gossip and snide remarks, Marcus remained composed. He knew every step forward, every barrier broken, would be paid for with skeptical looks, mocking laughter, and pointed fingers. And he understood that only his real skills and steadfast perseverance could answer the challenges that lay ahead. The tension in the air hadn't even subsided when a new storm broke. This time direct and icy. On Thursday morning, as soon as Marcus stepped into the office, he received an urgent summons to the 17th floor, the territory of the board of directors, where every key decision at Halberg International was made, and the coldest, most forbidding place for any outsider to tread in the company's power structure. The moment he got off the elevator, Marcus felt the shift in atmosphere. The 17th floor corridor was laid with deep gray wool carpet. Abstract artworks lined the walls. The faint scent of luxury perfume lingered in every breath. Opposite the large conference, room doors gleamed a polished brass plaque. Board of Directors. He didn't wait long before the board's executive assistant ushered him into the quiet glass, walled room. Sitting there was Eleanor Craig, her silver hair pulled back in a sleek bun, her dark suits impeccably pressed. Her reputation for no mercy forged over 3 decades of steering Halberg. Her eyes drifted slowly, coldly appraising every crease of Marcus's uniform, her gaze unashamedly scrutinizing and challenging. "Please sit, Marcus," she said, her voice neither high nor low, but a command born of authority. She flipped open a thick dossier, the rustle of papers like rain against a nighttime roof. "I've reviewed your file. No college degree, no department, level management experience. Your leadership background, aside from night security, is effectively nil. And jumping from guard to head of a global division. What justification do you have beyond, I suppose, good luck?" Marcus met her gaze directly. No flinch, no fear. He answered with the same calm that had become second nature to him. "I don't have a university degree, that's true, but I've handled language contracts with Morocco directly. Cleared a 3-month supply, chain logjam in just 1 week, negotiated the breakthrough with our Brazilian partners after 2 months of deadlock, and uncovered translation errors in previous international contracts that saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars each year." Eleanor didn't interrupt. Her fingers tapped the glass tabletop in a deliberate rhythm as her eyes betrayed a mix of consideration and doubt. "You're suggesting Halberg International should rely on intuition and grit, instead of formal expertise, credentials, and rigorous vetting, or is this some kind of social experiment?" Her tone wasn't merely interrogative. It was a direct strike at the pride of anyone never fully recognized by this system. Marcus took a steady breath, his gaze unwavering. "I don't need people to like me. I'm not here for praise, nor do I believe I'm an exception. I just want to be useful to the company, to my colleagues, to our partners. And if a degree is the sole criterion, Halberg risks overlooking countless people who genuinely deliver value." That statement carried no arrogance, just a clear, resolute fact. For the first time, Eleanor Craig paused, her eyes narrowing as though measuring the very roots of his composure. The questioning continued, sharp as glass, about his contract, transition methods, risk management approaches, and strategies for international talent development. Marcus didn't excuse his background or circumstances. He answered every question with data, documented successes, active listening, and faith in the work he'd done. Behind the frosted glass, other board members and even Eleanor's young assistants couldn't hide their intrigue, and sometimes even silent admiration. When the hearing concluded, Eleanor snapped the dossier shut and looked at Marcus longer than usual. "You're a high-stakes gamble, Marcus Atwater, but I think I'm beginning to understand why the CEO bet on you." Marcus stood, bowed his head in thanks, and quietly left the room, carrying no relief, but another milestone in his ongoing struggle. After the door closed, Eleanor traced her fingertips across the closed file, as if pondering a new definition of true value. Down the hallway, Gregory Harris watched Marcus depart the boardroom. He said nothing, he just stared, but in that silent gaze lay a heavy unease, a vague fear that the very system he'd protected was shifting, and this time it might never return to what it once was. The news of Marcus Atwater, once just the night shift guard, being quietly talked about across Halberg International, didn't fade after the board hearing. It grew into a silent wave that shook the company's culture to its core. In the days that followed, even as doubtful glances persisted, Marcus began to spark a new kind of inspiration in the glass and steel tower, one born of resilience and humility. At first, the people who sought him out weren't the high-profile department heads or staff with glittering international degrees, but the silent cogs in the system. The technicians pulling all-nighters to fix servers, the cleaning crews who navigated the dark basement floors each morning, the maintenance workers eating cold meals alone in the break room. They saw themselves in Marcus, a man who had always stood in the background, whose name never graced a performance report. Marcus never hesitated to stop and help a new technician fumbling with the meeting room's outlets when nobody else noticed. He took time to teach a young custodian how to greet foreign visitors, shared a few Spanish phrases, and encouraged a maintenance colleague to sign up for evening classes despite the teasing she'd get. In meetings, he routinely highlighted the unseen contributions of these invisibles, prompting more than one manager to pause and reflect. On the technical floors, handshakes, genuine smiles, and "thanks, Marcus" greetings became increasingly common. Under his influence, the atmosphere lightened. Those in the lower ranks grew confident enough to cross the main lobby unafraid, to speak up about problems, and even to propose initiatives they had once kept to themselves. The ripple effect didn't stop there. One Wednesday, the company was stunned when CEO Jonathan Kellerman quietly renamed the largest training room the Atwater Room. No grand ceremony, no flowers or cake. A new brass plaque appeared. The Atwater Room, where those who work in silence are heard and empowered. Never before in Halberg's history had a security guard's name graced its premier training space. The move sent a fresh undercurrent through the organization. Some applauded, others sneered, "PR stunt," but nobody could deny Marcus's imprint on the company's evolving DNA. It went further still. Kellerman followed up with a company-wide email, plain-spoken and resolute. Halberg International will no longer be a place where only those in suits are heard. The true experts are those who create value, no matter their title. Take inspiration from Marcus Atwater. In the boardroom, Gregory Harris and other longtime skeptics went silent at their screens. Gregory, once the driving force behind every initiative, now found young staff openly talking about wanting to learn from Marcus. In subsequent meetings, managers shifted their approach, listening more and embracing unconventional ideas. This transformation didn't roar in with trumpets, but spread quietly, steadily. Marcus never sought the spotlight or a mention in every newsletter. He simply carried on doing what he did best: advising, training, translating, or simply listening and encouraging. He became a living testament for every invisible employee at Halberg. No dream is too small, no position too modest if you persist and believe in your worth. From that day on, no one at Halberg could walk past a lone figure in a navy, blue uniform without pausing. They understood that behind that unassuming silhouette lay untapped potential that, once recognized, could transform everything. Even as the tide of change washed through Halberg International, word of the Atwater Room and the CEO's public endorsement on everyone's lips, beneath the surface the old undercurrents of prejudice and entrenched power still hadn't quieted. A number of veteran department heads, long believers in the traditional ladder of prestige and keepers of the old order, deliberately erected invisible barriers around Marcus. In cross-functional strategy meetings, many would avoid mentioning his name or simply skim past his proposals, citing insufficient real-world experience or the need to revisit process. Occasionally, important recommendations Marcus submitted would get bogged down in unusually slow reviews, be tweaked without his knowledge, or vanish into silence. None of this compared to Gregory Harris, an emblem of the company's covert opposition, who made his resistance painfully clear. In interdepartmental meetings, he didn't hesitate to challenge Marcus openly, drilling into every minor detail. "I believe our multicultural strategies should be led by folks with formal international management credentials. You can't upend a decades-old operating system over a handful of headline-grabbing wins." Gregory went even further behind the scenes, quietly directing his allies to stall Marcus's initiatives, delaying status reports, ignoring his messages, or scheduling Marcus so he had no face time with key partners. Whenever news of Marcus closing a new deal reached him, Gregory would only say coldly, "One swallow doesn't make a summer. Let's see how long he lasts." Yet, in stark contrast to this wave of rejection, there burned a quieter current of support. Late at night, as Marcus checked his work email, he'd sometimes find anonymous messages from logistics, maintenance, or IT staff. "Marcus, thank you for having the courage to speak up. Seeing you gives me hope. I'm still learning languages quietly, and because of you, I dared to dream bigger. You inspire me. If you ever struggle, don't give up." Those simple, heartfelt notes sustained Marcus through the turbulence. He never replied to every message, nor did he flaunt the backing he'd earned. Instead, he wore a steady smile and maintained his humility. Marcus understood that living his truth each day, delivering results, and patiently rising on merit, that was the strongest rebuttal to every lingering bias in the company. After each meeting where his ideas were overlooked, Marcus returned to his office and pressed on, building training programs, forging connections with international colleagues, and supporting every invisible colleague in other divisions. He recognized that this battle wouldn't be won in a day, a week, or even a month, but was a long journey in which every day of genuine work counted as a silent victory. And it was that quiet perseverance, over time, that made Marcus's legacy ever stronger, more profound, and more enduring in the hearts of those who had once felt the smallest among the towering systems. Somewhere in the wings, even his fiercest detractors began to reconsider the boundaries between title, power, and the true value of a person. Even as the undercurrent of prejudice persisted, Marcus grew ever more quietly determined and laser-focused in every step he took. He knew that if he spent all his energy proving his own worth, he'd remain trapped in a cycle of doubt and resistance. Instead, he shifted his focus to something far more important: building a level playing field where anyone, maintenance staff, custodians, or technicians, could be recognized for their true abilities. That's why Marcus presented CEO Jonathan Kellerman with a bold proposal: the Voice Inside program. His vision was to create an internal mentoring network where every employee would have access to language training, soft skills workshops, project management courses, and cross-cultural communication sessions, regardless of their role, uniform, or background. Even more radically, the program would invite those who'd long been invisible to step up as instructors, sharing their stories and sparking confidence in their peers. At first, the board was skeptical. Gregory Harris was the loudest critic. If everyone's learning to be a leader, who's going to maintain order? We pay professionals for their expertise. We're not in the business of turning every guard into an executive. But Kellerman publicly championed the project and even showed up at the first training sessions himself, joining Marcus in fielding questions from employees at all levels. Despite whispered jabs from veteran managers, Marcus pressed on, leading classes, facilitating discussions, and giving every inner voice a stage. Just 3 months in, Voice Inside exceeded all expectations. Technicians, maintenance workers, and custodians, staff who'd never received formal training, became key contributors on new project teams. Those who had once stayed silent now confidently pitched creative ideas, earning genuine recognition from leadership. Cross-department teamwork improved dramatically, and internal issues were resolved faster thanks to open communication channels. Even many of Marcus's earlier naysayers began to listen. When a Voice Inside initiative uncovered costly errors in the logistics process, saving the company hundreds of thousands of dollars, the board could no longer ignore the program's success. Gregory Harris, outwardly still guarded, betrayed a softer look whenever Marcus presented to a larger audience. The program's highest moment came when Marcus was invited to be the keynote speaker at the National Logistics Leadership Conference. Under the warm stage lights, facing hundreds of executives, he shared his journey in a calm, sincere voice. Never flashy. People judged me by my uniform. They called me the night guard, the invisible man. But I kept going. I learned new words on long, dark shifts because I believed I had value. Today, I stand here. Not because my life was magically transformed, but because I never gave up on myself. The auditorium fell silent. Then, wave after wave of applause, and more than a few tears, drowned out the room. Attendees rose to their feet, moved not only by Marcus's story, but by the realization that they, too, had been part of an indifferent system. Some wept, some embraced his message in hushed thanks, and several younger leaders confessed, "You've shown us that hope is real, no matter who you are or where you start." Even back at Halberg International, anonymous messages began trickling into Marcus's inbox from former detractors. "I never believed a guard could inspire an entire organization. Now, I want to start over, if only in a small way." Voice Inside quickly became a model for other companies to emulate. Meanwhile, Marcus, still unassuming and composed, kept reminding everyone of the power of a single voice, the strength of perseverance, and the importance of living one's truth amid any storm. And standing there under the bright lights, hearing that thunderous applause, Marcus knew he'd truly changed a system. Through kindness, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of someone once deemed invisible. The conference ended in sustained applause, the audience's eyes still shining with emotion and renewed hope. Marcus returned to Halberg International in the warm afternoon light, walking through the grand lobby that had once felt like alien territory to him. Each step bridged his past and present, from the invisible guard to the inspiring leader, from the silent observer to the man who dared to speak out and transform a system once thought unshakable. He entered his office, a small room now filled with new light. In that rare private moment, Marcus opened his desk drawer and pulled out his old security badge. Its plastic edges worn, the printing faded, the sole proof that he belonged here. Beside it lay his new nameplate, gleaming with the inscription, Marcus Atwater, Head of Cultural and International Relations. He placed the two badges side by side and stared at them long and quietly. Memories flooded back like slow-motion film. Lonely night patrols, simple meals in the break room, the disdainful glances in the hallways, dreams locked away beneath his uniform and the static hum of his radio. He remembered coming home exhausted, finding his son asleep over his homework, and sitting in the quiet streetlight, wondering if his perseverance meant anything at all. But now, every scratch on that old badge stood as a vivid testament to his journey from the depths of invisibility. Marcus hadn't just earned a new title, a new office, or recognition from leadership. He'd brought countless other invisible employees along with him. Technicians, maintenance staff, custodians, those who once hid their dreams in the shadows, now dared to lift their heads into the light. His inbox filled with simple messages. Thanks to you, I signed up for that evening German class. I just pitched a new idea to the maintenance team, and the boss praised me in front of everyone. I'm no longer ashamed of my uniform. Even former detractors were shifting. After a period of silence, Gregory Harris sent Marcus a brief email. We may not be alike, but I can't deny this. You've made me rethink everything. Looking around Halberg International, Marcus realized that real change doesn't come from a single grand gesture. It starts with ordinary people daring to break the smallest prejudices, daring to believe in their own value. One voice, one idea, one stand at a time. That night, before leaving the office, Marcus wrote a few lines on the whiteboard by the door. If you've ever been overlooked, keep pushing forward. Someone will notice you, and when opportunity arrives, be sure to open that door for the person behind you. Because talent doesn't wear a uniform, grit needs no permission, and change always begins with someone brave enough to defy prejudice, ultimately turning a once rigid system into a place where everyone has a chance to step into their own light. The story may end here, but its echo will resonate in every heart as a timeless reminder. Don't judge a person by what they wear, where they sit, or where they come from. Look instead at how they live, how they refuse to give up, and how they pass opportunities on to the next person. If Marcus Atwater's journey spoke to you, don't forget to hit like, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next inspiring story of courage, fairness, and the drive to rise. Thank you for joining us. Remember, opportunity never shuts its door on those who truly persevere and believe in their own worth.